Thank you very much for having me. I'm a people strategy expert. I work mostly with startups, tech startups all across the world. And I support them with basically everything people related. People strategy is how do you make the business plan a reality? And in order to make your business plan a reality, you need people. Before that, it's only just a piece of paper. So I cover everything related to people, from leadership, culture, HR, obviously, but also people management, etc. So I've been doing this for almost 10 years, and before that I was with Google for 10 years in the people operations team.
Great, thank you very much. One of the things that was more shocking yesterday when we went through your presentation was, let's say I'll start with the ugly part. Startups fail, and the statistics are not on our side. 90% of startups fail. I'm going to go through the top 10 reasons of why startups fail, because you have a theory around that I'd like to hear from you. I'm just going to read through them, okay? The number one reason is no market need. Number two, ran out of cash. Number three, not the right team. Four, you got outcompeted. Five, you have a pricing or a cost issue. Six, you have a poor product. Seven, you don't have a business model. Eight, poor marketing. And nine, ignore customers. So, yes, I'm sorry to start this session with the bad or the ugly part, but it's worth hearing why does this happen? What do all of these have in common?
Yeah, so this doesn't come from me. The fact that 90% of the startups fail is a known number all across. Investors know that as well. That's why I always tell as an investor that you need to invest in 10 startups in order to have one unicorn, 2, 3 working ones, and the rest are just going to be quite failing quite early. So these reasons come out almost every year. They do a new survey, and it's pretty much the same reasons every year. It's just that the ranking is slightly different. But so when we look at all these reasons, it's quite striking that at the end of the day, any of those reasons end up being a human failure, a human/management/leadership failure, which is pretty much the same. It's a people-related thing. Because even if you have the wrong pricing, it means that this pricing strategy was not right. And who is behind the pricing strategy? That's the person that was in charge of that. If you get outcompeted, it's kind of the same. If you have the wrong go-to-market strategy, it's because the person behind that was not doing the right job, etc., etc. So at the end of the day, everything is related to people, hence the reason to have the right people in the organization, hence people strategy.
Thank you. Talking about people, one of the ways that you phrase how startups grow is looking at it as a child. Your book is called From Zero to 1,000, and you tend to look at companies who grow, so from 0 to 1,000 employees or persons, and you frame it in a way that resonates a lot with me. I have kids, so maybe that's a reason behind that. And how you parent a toddler, an innocent toddler, a child, a teen, a young adult. There must be tons of different things that happen at different ages, and there are different areas that you focus on, no? how do you frame that for a startup in a startup environment?
Yeah, so the analogy came out when I was writing the book, and because being a manager is very similar to being a parent, and being a founder is similar to being a manager, but at the organization level. It's not a team anymore; it's an organization that you manage. And when I wrote the book, my daughter was 13 years old, so I could see the premise of teenagehood. Now that she's 17, we have gone through the pike of teenagehood, and I remember thinking, "Oh my God, I was so right in my book. The struggle is there." So basically, how you see this? So from 0 to 30 employees, that's what I call the age of innocence. That's your baby phase. That's cute. That's definitely disrupting. You don't sleep anymore. There's a few things that you have to change in your life. It's a bit stressful, but they're so cute, and it's quite nice. It's lovely. You're engaged. You're always with them, and you're doing everything. So that's very much what happens in a startup. When you're below 30 employees, everybody knows each other. You go to the founder if you have a question. You're involved in every discussion. It's very exciting. There's clarity for everyone in terms of what the goals are. It's the objective is to survive and to grow. So everything is quite simple, and this time will always be referred as the good old days. Same as when you have a child. So after 30 employees, that's when things start to be a little bit more complicated, because already as a founder, as a CEO, you start to be a little less accessible. And usually 30 employees is roughly the time when you reach Series A-ish. And where growth is going to accelerate quite significantly. So you're going to hire a lot more people. It becomes more complicated. The early ones start to think about the early days and how better it was, because it was clearer, it was simpler. You start adding more layers, and so some new employees don't even know who they report to. They have not a lot of clarity on what is expected of them or how it's even evaluated. There are a lot of communications and processes that are new, that are not necessarily adapted for the size of company that you are, and so it takes a lot of time, etc. So that's more complicated. And teenagehood, so from the moment you reach 75 employees, that's the pre-adolescence age. And so you start to have an organization that is too big for you to be at all in control. And that's what happens when you have a teenager. You can't control them anymore. You can try to get them to go to bed at the hour that you think is right. Good luck to you, it won't happen. And that's pretty much what happens in an organization that is beyond 75 people. So I usually say from 75 to 100 people, 200 people. That's where you have to hope that you have done the good work early on in building the foundations, so that when you reach that phase, things are naturally floating, that people will understand what are the right things to do, because you have a good culture, everything is quite clear, because it's not at that point that you will straighten things up. It's too late. You have to go with it. And then the next phase is, it's kind of the same. It's the trend from that goes, which was the foundation from the start.
Yes, and most of the startups here at Hub 71 are
below 200.
Yes, yeah. Exactly. Yes, give them time, but we will get there. You also mentioned something that resonated very strongly with me, talking about the founder's journey. You defined the founder or the founder persona as the loneliest job in the world. That resonated a lot. In my case, I have been a founder. I've been a solo founder, and it felt very deeply. there's also a bit where founders have to evolve. You start in one way and you end in another, no, completely different. I'm pretty sure it has to do with the same way that the company grows, the founder grows. Is there a book that you can follow there, or how can you manage the different roles from being a founder to
the evolution of the role of the founder? So the loneliness of the founder, and more specifically the CEO. I mean, it's very much the CEO that is all alone at the top of of the pyramid, really. This is something really, real for all of you that are in this situation. And I'm working with a lot of VCs, and this is one of the issues that they're still trying to solve. Is like, how do we help our CEOs and giving them the confidence and the tools to be able to really handle well, because the pressure comes from everywhere. One of my advice here as a CEO is to make sure that you balance your time and that you have a good supporting team around you with peer founders that you can speak to and that will tell about their journey as well. Find some advisors, coaches that you can speak to, and most importantly, people that you're confident, so whether those or other ones, to be vulnerable. It's important to get away from that image that we have that the CEO is an all-knowing person. I know it all. I know what to do. It's not possible. We're human, whether we are at the top of the pyramid or at the bottom. It's important that as a CEO, we are okay with not knowing, with asking questions and communicating that, this way to our team. And our team will be happy to also be able to relate with you instead of seeing you at the top and not speaking with anyone. Now, in terms of the different stages of growth of a founder, so there are 3 stages. The first stage is the founder. That's at the very beginning when you're what I call the jack of all trades. So you have multiple hats on your head. You're the salesperson, the product person, the admin, the marketing, the HR. You're a bit everybody at the same time. It's complicated, but at the same time, because it's your baby, you're quite happy to actually do things yourself. You feel in control. That's quite exhilarating. So those that really manage well are those that are very resourceful, hands-on, flexible, and can adapt easily from one task to the other. Now, the problem with this is that works up to 10, 15 people maximum. After that, you are a manager, which is your second role. And to be a good manager, you need to be able to delegate responsibilities. And in order to delegate, you need to stop doing and be okay with the fact that it will be done differently than you were doing it, that it might be done slower, that people might not see the issues at the same time as you. And in order for them to reach the level of expertise that you expect, you need to invest time in them. You need to grow them. That becomes your job, but not do for them. And the issue that I see the most is founders stepping in too fast. Well, usually, no, they trust people immediately, but they don't necessarily train them or explain to them what is necessary for them to do to really excel in the job. And then once one thing doesn't go well, they take off everything and take it back. And it's like, oh, no, that's not the way of doing it. That's terrible in terms of experience from as an employee. And you can be sure that from that time, you start to really disengage them and dispower them. So as a manager, it's important to be able to let go of the control, delegate responsibility, but also authority. The authority is when you allow people to make a decision. If you hire the right people in the right roles, they are the right people to make the decisions. they're most probably better than you in any ways in their field of expertise. You can't possibly be good at these 15 hats that you have on your head. So you have to allow them to grow into the role and be their best self into that role. So manager is the second. The third one is leader. And so instead of being responsible for a team, you're responsible for the organization. And here, in order to really be a good leader, you need to be totally remote from the operations. At that point, your job becomes to be visible and make sure that everybody hears from you regularly about the mission, the vision, the values, our business objectives, why we are here, etc. They are all here in the company for you, so they need to hear that from you regularly. So that takes time. And the second thing is to build the leadership team. You're the manager of the leadership team, so that's still the manager role. And then you need to build the organization to make sure that the organization is able to deliver, but you are not hands-on anymore.
And that's a very difficult journey to adapt
it
from
is.
one point to
It is
to
because
another.
when
Yes.
it's only at the point where you finally feel comfortable in the role that
Yes.
you have to shift to the next one, and what makes you a good jack of all trades is not what makes you a good manager, and what makes you a good manager is not what makes you a good leader. So.
And you were saying one part of the leader part, so let's say in the later stage, is showcasing the company culture, the mission, the vision, the values of the company, the purpose of the company as such, where in many cases, most of the employees have not heard it, or you have not directly hired, and you have maybe, there's layers of separation between most of the employees and yourself. To be clear, many startup founders, when they start their company, and I can include myself there, do not take that bit too seriously. We focus more on selling, on the product, on the revenue model, on raising, and we tend to forget about building an organization as such. Of course, that has consequences later on. At the beginning, we don't realize, no? When do we have to start putting this in stone in the organization?
It starts from the beginning, really. I only start working with startups that are at least 10 employees, just because before that it should work rather organically. The whole thing is about keeping time on the side to think about the organization. Who am I as a leader, as a founder? Who am I? How do I manage an organization? How do people experience working with me? That will already define the key elements of your culture. And once you know that, once you know the type of profiles that will thrive in, when working with you, you know who to hire. You know who to hire and who not to hire. Who are the people you want to attract and who are those that you want to discourage from working with you, even if they have the right technical skills. They might have fantastic resume, but if they don't work well with you, it will never work. It will actually be the opposite. So what I see that most founders struggle to do and then end up struggling once the organization is bigger and end up firefighting and which usually is around Series A, Series B. That's when everything starts to crack altogether. It's because they didn't spend time to think. It's not to do, it's to think. To think about the people strategy. The people strategy is the ownership of the CEO. It's not something that you delegate to HR or to your assistant or whoever, or even the COO. This is driven by the CEO. And in order to define the people strategy, you need to pause and think about who I am, and therefore who I am, what type of company are we building, what is it that we're doing, so the mission, the vision, right? What is it that we do, who are we doing it for, and where are we going, the vision. once all this is clear, then it becomes much more natural to, to build the rest. The purpose, mission, vision is informing the business strategy, not the other way around. You don't define your mission or your vision from your business strategy. The business strategy comes from is the steps to get from your purpose, how you started the company, to your vision through the mission. That's your vehicle. That's the first part of the company culture. The second part are the values. The values inform you how you're doing it, what type of organization you're building, what type of systems. And those systems, they need to be in sync with who you are. If you take systems that are working well in another company, they're not necessarily going to work in your company. It has to be designed for purpose, for your company, with your systems.
By the way, you have worked all around the world. Differences in companies being built or the way that people structure this around the world?
That's a very interesting question. Not necessarily, actually. What is different is more like the state, and even though no, actually that was a question I was asking myself when I wrote the book, and it's really culture agnostic. We're speaking about culture just before. The culture is defined by 80% of the culture comes from the founder, from the CEO. And so if the CEO lives in Singapore but is Spanish, there will be most probably a stronger Spanish culture in the organization as long as you're strongly Spanish in your core, in the way that you interact with people. However, you could have a Spanish founder in Spain who is very, very shy and very, not the stereotype that we might have for Spanish people. And in that case, the company will be rather quiet. And so, no, my answer is therefore no. People's strategy, the different steps on how to do it is culture agnostic, or geography agnostic, and industry agnostic as well, from what I've seen.
There's another part that I found very interesting about the session we had yesterday, which was, your organization goes from 0 to 10, and there's a moment in which it starts growing. When do you start having a proper people department, an HR team, or an HR person, let's say, to start with, no? And what kind of role is this? What kind of role do you need for that person at the beginning and later on? The other bit also that I found very interesting was you look at hiring different people to help you hire, so recruiting agencies versus headhunters, and you have like a very clear moment of or roles that you think work with ones or others. No?
Yeah, so you don't need an HR team, a proper HR team, until you're 30 employees. Before that, usually HR is handled as one hat of an admin. So that would be a general admin person that is doing some marketing and social media thing, and a lot of other very operational and administrative tasks, and HR falls into that. From 30 employees, you need to have a bit more structure and also prepare for hypergrowth, because that's kind of the door to hypergrowth. And so the first role of HR, in HR you have three main roles. You have HR operations, recruitment, and employee relations. These are the three main function into the HR team that needs to be covered. From 30 employees, you're not going to hire 3 HR. It's not making any sense. So you're going to hire a junior HR person that will be doing HR operations because they need to be ensuring that we have the employment contract, that people can take leave, that you're compliant with local regulations and all this. But they will also help with the administration of the recruitment, so basically collecting the job description, posting it, scheduling the interviews and all this. They're not necessarily going to add a lot of value to the recruitment process. They will run the recruitment process. Now, and the third role it happened. But yeah, what is interesting is that from the moment you need to hire more than 20 people, you really need to hire a recruiter. And the reason for that is, one, it will be less costly because from 20 employees, 20 hires, it doesn't make any economical sense to hire an agency. Plus, if you only use your network, if you need to hire 20 people, you're going to have some diversity issues as well. So you want to diversify a little bit your profile. But the main reason is that a recruiter role is very different from a HR role. An HR operations person is more an administrative person, somebody that will have strong attention to detail, who is good at organizing things, so very much process and operations oriented. A good recruiter is a good salesperson. It's much closer to commercial type of work. A good recruiter is somebody that is able to help the managers identify what exactly they're looking for, what do they need, what type of profile, where to find this type of profile, and then search for them to really go on the market and dig for candidates that may not apply, and being able to be creative in ways to reach out to new people, the niche people. So that's much closer to a salesperson, and so an HR person cannot be at the same time a salesperson. It's two different jobs. And then usually the HR BP business partner, so that's the employee relations. That's something you develop slightly. So once you have an HR operations and a recruiter, you will next hire a HR manager above that will be taking care of the employees and the managers. So will become a support to the leadership team to make decisions. Now, I was speaking about your first hire being an HR manager. I said somebody quite junior because they can operate the systems, etc. However, when you have your first HR person, that's the moment when you need to set up the system. You need to set up the HR system and processes and policies and all this. This requires strategic thinking. You definitely do not want to copy-paste all the systems and processes and policies that came from the company where your HR comes from, because that may be working there, that will not working where you are. So you need somebody that will be able to think strategically. These people, HR people that can think strategically, they usually have 15, 20 years of experience. So you're not going to hire this type of profile in a company of 30 employees. So what I recommend is to have somebody junior, get a mentor that will be providing the strategic vision and guiding your HR manager in the design of the right systems and processes for your company. So that will help to really upgrade your HR and really get the right systems at the right time for your company.
One of the things that you mentioned about the HR systems is that they have to ensure fairness and equity. Very specifically around that. That's something that permeates all the time, and that if you don't manage from the beginning can easily, as the name of this session is, make or break your company. No.
Yeah. So that's that's about the HR processes and HR policies and processes. What is important about that is just to define who you are as an organization. So the HR policies or processes would be, for instance, what are how many leaves do we give our employees, or what is the policy around expenses, all these type of things. If you copy paste from a quite traditional organization, you're going to have something extremely heavy with a lot of approval steps to go to, your N+1 if you expense more than 100, and then you need to go plus N+1 plus N+2, blah, 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 fill in this form, blah, blah, blah. When you're startups of 30 people, what the heck? I mean, really, that doesn't make any sense. So the policy, one great example that I find about policies, and then I speak about appraisal, but for the policies, like everything else, it's linked to your culture. Netflix did an amazing job about that. Netflix set their values super well, and there's one value that they called judgment, that basically said, we trust your judgment. We think that we hire grown-up adults that can make decisions, that can, think on their feet. And therefore, we're, going to trust your judgment. Now, that's good to say, but is it true on the ground? And so in order to make it true on the ground, which is, the reality of a culture, it's not on the paper, it's where people experience it, they have adapted their policies to that, and therefore the leave policy was there's no leave policy. We trust you to know when is the right time for you to take leaves. You know when you're tired. You are a professional. You know that if you are in the middle of launching an important project, or that if half of your team is already on leave, it's probably not the right time to take leave. Any grown-up adult should be able to, understand that. So why do we have to write it down? And so that's how you have a consistency and that you can develop fairness. Now, the fairness is to make it clear, understood, and available to everyone. So everybody needs to have access to this information. But what I find interesting is the consistency between what they say and what people live on the ground. And that's why if you copy-paste systems, you'll have just a patchwork of different things, but they will not have a meaningful working environment. And for the fairness, it's mostly the appraisal. So it's after, when you have employees after 2 years, employees start to, to think about career progression, and we'll start to ask for salary increases. So it's important to also have a system, an appraisal system. The appraisal is when it's once a year, you review all the employees, their salary, and decide whether they need to have a salary increase or not. If you don't have that, and it doesn't have to be complicated, really. It's just about setting a date and, figuring out more or less how you're going to do that. Don't worry about having a very complicated algorithm for it at this point. It's just have a date so that you don't end up increasing salaries or giving a promotion just to those asking you. Because that's what happens otherwise. You will end up just increasing salaries to those who had the courage to ask you, or those who came with a competing offer from a competitor, and all the other ones that do not dare to ask will not get a salary increase.
By the way, do we have data on what happened with Netflix after implementing this policy?
The policy actually existed before. It's just they formalized it. And so that's why, the progression is first you always start with the culture, define who you are, how are you doing it. Then you look at your HR policies and you ensure that they are in sync, that they are not contradicting your values. And so your values are already defined. I mean, the values need to define what actually is in the organization, not what you hope it was. But the policies are actually, a good description, a translation of your policy, for your values, and then you have the systems. Now it's working very well, and that's the whole thing about having a strong culture. It's a good culture, differentiate yourself from other organization. So you should know whether that's a company for you or not. Netflix, that can look very attractive on paper, but also what they say is that if you abuse the system, you're out. We have grown-up adults in the organization. If you're not able to understand that, you don't take leave when we are in the middle of the launch of your project or because half of your team is not here, that's not what we call a grown-up adults.
Yes.
So it's all about consistency, and so people know about that, and you know whether you like. I will give another example that is quite telling in terms of culture. There's a company. It's quite an old thing. It's in Brazil. It's not a very sexy company. They're called Semco, and they produce marine pump. So quite industrial, heavy industry. And it was a traditional company. And the daddy gave the company to the son, who was turning 20 years old. And the company before was very traditional with, the hierarchical structure, command and control leadership, the norm at that time. When Ricardo Semler took over from his dad, he came up with these great ideas. It was like, I want to do things differently. I want to bring democracy in the workplace. Democracy, it's like, people make decisions. What did it look like? Because it's not just, I hope this. No, he actually made changes. So there was no work desk. People could sit anywhere. And actually, it was encouraged not to sit at the same place all the time. Why? So that your managers wouldn't see you. And they would not be able to evaluate your performance based on how long you've been at the office, but on actual results. You were also to choose, they could choose their salary. So they decide their level of salary, but the salary is transparent. Everybody in the organization knows the salary level of everyone. Therefore, if you are a bit too greedy, people will know if they see a discrepancy between how much you're paid and the level of work you're giving, you're going to be voted out. And managers are being voted as well. So every 6 months, managers are re-voted or not into their role. So this is clearly different, right? And, you know whether that's something you want or not, right? It's like, perhaps not for me. Good. That means that it's a good job in terms of culture.
Very interesting switch from one extreme to another, no?
Exactly.
Yeah. Great. We're going to wrap up. Last comment. One of the things you mentioned both yesterday and in your book was how to build high-performing teams, about how you start, as you're mentioning all the time, with the culture, and how there's a moment in which you have to delegate and properly delegate, and then how you have to create a safe working environment around that. Could you expand around these? Because at the end of the day, I think we're pretty much here for that.
For the performance, yeah, I know. So most founders who come to me are like, how to build a high-performing team. So, and that's a topic that I have been working on a lot over the past 4 or 5 years. That's really, next book will be on that. Because it's a book in itself. It might be an encyclopedia. The thing is that there's a misunderstanding on what a performance management system is. Because most people think that a performance management system will help people to perform. No, it doesn't. Performance management, performance means getting things done. So a performance management system, is a system that helps to build performance, right? To help people to get things done. When people think about performance management, they think about the 360 performance review at the end of the year. I have never seen a performance review change a poor performer into a high performer. Never. That doesn't happen. The only thing that can help a poor performer become a high performer is a good manager. That's the only thing. Now, for a good manager to be able to do a good job, you need to build the systems around to make it possible. So starting with the culture, yeah, we hire the right people, people that are in sync. We have good recruitment. We were able to hire people that are with the right skills for the job that we need at the right time. We need to have a safe environment where people are free to share their opinion, to free to to make mistakes. That's the, when you delegate to people, you need to give them the freedom to make mistakes and learn from them. That's how people grow. You grow much faster from mistakes than successes. And then there are 4 key drivers of performance. But here there are drivers of performance. The key drivers of performance are 1, clarity of goal. Starts from the mission and vision. What is it that we do? Where are we going? You bring that to the employee. From the moment the employees are clear how their action is impacting the overall mission and vision and company objectives, it helps them make the right decision. So clarity of goal is very important. The second is to provide ongoing support. Ongoing support. It's every day. It's not at the end of the year that you provide feedback to your employees saying, back in January, the way you handled the customer, that was not that great. By the way, therefore, your score is only 80%. You don't have 20% of your bonus, blah, blah, blah. No, that doesn't. So the support needs to be ongoing. You need to equip people properly to perform. So it starts from onboarding, and then the manager needs to do the one-to-one weekly to be able to provide the feedback, etc. So that's the second. The third is fair compensation. If you want people to perform, you need to make sure that you're doing your part of the deal as well. So make sure that you're providing the right, that you have an employment contract, that you're paying people on time, that you allow them to take leave. I have seen companies that have no employment contract. So many. Or that do not pay their employees on time or not consistently. So make your part of the deal, and once you've done that, then you can go on their back and ask for more. But you're going to be not in it. So the fair compensation, and compensation is not just the salary; it's just what else. What is in there for them. And the last thing is processes, fair process, adapted processes. Too many startups either have not enough processes when they scale, or too many processes too early. Processes are here to help with scale. So unless the processes are actually solving for an existing issue or just formalizing an existing practice for scale, just most of the time it actually constrains performance. So once you have those 4 things in place, you actually don't need a performance management system. You just need an appraisal, once a year to say, okay, how is our employee doing since last year? How are their value? Has the value increased? And therefore, their price, right? Their salary, should we realign that to the value that they now bring? But otherwise, the feedback is all day long. Once they do a mistake or once they do something great, it's immediately that we need to go to them and say, what you've done here, that's amazing. By doing this with this client, now we have a client for life. Keep doing it. They're going to keep doing it if you tell them that. So that for me, performance management is not a thing. Well, the systems are not a thing. It's from the moment you have all the foundations, and that's why performance is the outcome. It's if you follow all the steps properly, culture, HR systems, and then ongoing support with strong managers and systems, you don't need the very heavy 360 performance review at the end of the year that everybody hates, by the way. So
we will be waiting for that book, hopefully. I would like to open the floor for questions. If anybody would like. Oh, thank you.
People on one side, you got artificial intelligence on the other side. Have you invented a word to compete with artificial intelligence? Is this natural intelligence? Is it real intelligence? Is it biological intelligence? This is something, okay? Now the question. You see, we are now standing in a shared office space, and I came by a shared ride. And some of us are living in shared homes. Why did the shared personnel did not take off? Fractional
It's
finance officer, for example, or marketing officer, fractional, or renter executive, renter manager, these things didn't take off. Why not?
Oh, it's taking off either. It's booming. So in the US, more than 50% of the workforce is freelancer, and that keeps increasing. And we're seeing this happening quite a lot. I do meet regularly, new startups or new platform for fractional CXO. So I actually think that it's coming. I mean, at least I'm seeing a lot around more and more. But to your point about AI, very very interesting point, because technology. So I often do talks as women in tech, because I'm in tech and I'm a woman, and I get women in tech. I'm not that a tech person. I'm probably the least tech person in my family. For me, technology are tools, and that's what I see in organization. Not just in organization, actually a bit of everywhere. But in organization, that's definitely true, is that we're using tools more and more without even thinking what they are for. We first get the tool and then we see, let's see what they're going to be helpful for. So that's basically when you download an app on your phone and then you're like, let's see how that works. HR and organization from a team management point of view is full of that. Full. Employees don't know where to go anymore, because there's this app for engagement, this app to recognize your peers, this app for your trainings, this app for this, and that's without speaking with the collaboration app to work with your peers in your team, and this is for the meetings, and this is for the... Oh my God. So each tool individually is fine. But when you look at the whole thing, you end up having a complexity of things that is horrible. So technology is a great tool, whether that's AI or anything. But like every tool, you need to have an objective before you pick it. When you go gardening, you know that you need to put your plants here and that, and therefore you're going to go to the shop to buy the right tool to plant that plant. If you go to the shop first and you get something it has nothing to do, the plant is going to upside down. So that's the same thing. So my advice to all companies is clarify your goals before you get a tool. Fractional leaders being a tool in itself as well. Make sure what you need. But it's changing, frankly, the way people hire. Indeed, before, the main way of hiring was full-timers. I need this type of competencies or capability in my organization. We need to hire a full-time employee for that. Why? We don't necessarily need this full-time. It might not fill in a full-time job, and sometimes it doesn't last in time. It's something that we need for the next 6 months to set up a process, for instance. And once the process is set up, we don't need the person anymore. So yeah, I think it's a great change that is happening.
So you recommend it?
Oh yeah.
So here's an idea for founders, would-be founders. This is a niche. Get into it.
A lot of people are getting... So if you type fractional leaders on Google, I'm sure you're going to find a lot of platforms. So many platforms are being created to, you know, but 10 years ago it was for consultants. They were doing the same platforms for consultants. So,
But we don't have an Uber as yet in fractional executives or fractional talent. So yeah, there's probably still room to find an Airbnb or a WeWork.
yeah.
Or somebody, yeah.
Well, one of them will become at some point. So a lot of people are getting in the space. Let's
Right.
see if that works.
Let's see if anybody in the room
I think it's
listens
more-
to this and
I think it's more from an economic point of view that it's a little bit tricky. Who pays for in the platform?
Right. Thank you.
Well, my question was pretty much to build on the AI theme. How does the HR strategy or your framework change in the age of AI? There is no difference between a junior and a senior anymore. That's the way. That's my
Between a junior and
and a senior.
with AI? Oh no, I don't. I don't agree.
That's my thesis.
So in which field? Which field are you in? Any field? Yeah. Well, so but in that case, CEOs are not needed anymore, right? So startups are going to be created by AI. Yeah. Well, I mean, in that case, we don't need people. It's not about people's strategy, right? It's about people, full stop. Well, let's see where it goes. From the moment we need people, we'll need people's strategy, and we'll need definitely, to have a logic around that.
thank you very much, everybody, for being with us. Thank you, Anne, again.
Thank you.
We will be around right now if anybody wants to have a quick chat. Thank you very much again.
Thank you.